Welcome to the Connectable Podcast.
The Connectable Podcast starts in 3, 2, 1.
All right. The podcast just started. We don't even have an official intro to this podcast. Us saying that we don't have an official intro has basically become the official intro. We just start and have a conversation with our guest today. Today's guest is one of our favorites, someone who has, we've continued to bug over the last 3 years and has been on every podcast that I've started. Mental performance coach, speaker, probably author, probably, I don't know, so many things that we could probably list for you that are going to come true one day. But right now, mental performance coach and speaker, Lauren Johnson. What's going on?
Oh man, not much. Just happy to be here. Whenever you ask me to do a podcast, there's no question. It's like, yes, when, let's do this.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be on the short list. I don't know if maybe it's not a short list. I'm assuming it's a short. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I'm so
very exclusive.
I'm not a part of many of those, so I'm very thankful to be a part of this one. So, okay, can I just jump into this really quick?
Let's do it.
I want to start off hot. I don't like to do this to you and put you on the spot right away, but I'm going to today. So obviously you're a mental performance coach, and I would imagine that part of what you do is when you're working with a client, whether it be an athlete, a business person, whatever it may be, I imagine that part of what you do is try to identify and then help someone, eliminate potentially things that are holding them back from reaching their greatness. Would that be accurate?
Mm-hmm. To some
Okay.
degree, yeah.
Perfect. Now, for you, if you're looking at me, we've known each other for a little while. Do you think that Deb McCollum is holding me back as a podcaster? Again, I don't want to put you on the spot right away.
Right.
Like, is she something that needs to be eliminated from this podcast because I'm not quite reaching my full potential of being a great podcaster? The floor is yours.
There's one analogy I heard from a friend of mine, and he asked, he said, there are fountains and there are drains in our lives. How would you categorize Deb?
Oh, let me answer this? Oh, perfect. She is mostly a drain. I'm going to say this. Well, I'm going to add to your analogy. She's kind of like a drain that every once in a while will kind of like regurgitate stuff back out. So then it's almost like a fountain, but not one you really want to be a part of. Does that make sense?
Like the water fountains when you're like in elementary school that like barely spew water.
Yeah, exactly.
And like the kids that like put their mouth on the water fountains because it's not spewing enough.
Which there's so many problems with that, right? Because you'd always see the kid where it's like, hey, you're not supposed to put your mouth on the metal part of it.
Please don't.
So gross. So gross.
No, in all seriousness, I love Deb, and I'm so sad she's not here. So sad she's not here. It doesn't sound like you are, but Deb, for the record, I love you and I miss you.
There you go. And Lauren's saying she misses you, Deb, because you're never here when we have her on. Now, the last time Lauren and I recorded, not your fault because you're not a part of that podcast. That's my own podcast with Kevin. The previous podcast for Character Combine, Deb wasn't there. And so I can't imagine you offended her somehow. I know.
I guess that's my only question is like, did I say something to offend you, Deb? If that's the case, I would like to fix it.
Yeah. And she wants to make you less soft is what she's basically saying. So you don't get offended so easily. This is why I like having Lauren on the podcast because Lauren gets it. There's been times, whether it's this podcast or Character Combine, where I've made jokes in Deb's absence. And I get a look from people like, why are you saying this? Like, no, it's a joke. It's a joke. She's like a cousin to me. You know what I mean? I
was going to say if anybody just got to see you two riff back and forth, there would be no question as to why you're beating up on Deb for not being here, because it's just what you guys do even when she is here. So 100%. It just gives you the floor. And I think she knew that. She knew it was a part of not being here, that this was going to happen. I think it's fair. Exactly.
Right. I mean, like, obviously you came from the baseball world, which we'll get into, but like if someone's throwing BP fastballs, I'm not going to just say like, well, I'm used to hitting something faster. I'm used to hitting some sliders and curves. No, I'm going to hit the BP fastball out of the park.
That's right.
This is what it is. So anyways,
that's right. She would do the same, by the way.
And if she didn't, I would be disappointed.
I would be too.
Yeah. Then if she didn't do it, then I'm like, oh, we're about to break up this partnership.
Yeah, this is over. Wow. I should be scared.
Yeah, this is not good. Okay, perfect. Well, that's how we're going to start this thing. So anyways, Deb, I'm sorry that you're not here, but we're going to keep it moving without you. So obviously the name of this podcast is Connectable, and I'm just going to let people know right now, we try to, ask questions that have to do with connection. This one might be the most obnoxious that we've ever done, because I have so many questions about connection and all that for Lauren, which I'll get to. But the first one we always start off with is, how are we connected to our guest? And we like to let our audience know we're connected to you because we had Nikki B on our Character Combine podcast almost 3 years ago. And once we were done recording, she's like, oh, I have a couple of people that I would love to get you connected with. And we're like, oh yeah, we're just starting. So any connections you have with us or for us within the sports world would be fantastic. And I had listened to her podcast a little bit. And at that point, I forgot your name. I didn't know what your name was, but I knew you were with the Yankees. I'm like, oh, I hope she's going to say the Yankee girl, because that would be awesome. Because her episode was great. Your episode was great. And I tried to play it cool. And she's like, my friend Lauren, she's with the Yankees. I'm like, oh, that'd be great. And inside I'm like, yes. Like I was so excited. I'm like, the Yankee mental performance coach. And then we scheduled a podcast with you, and the rest is history. We've been connected with you, and you've been kind enough to join our podcast multiple times since then. But that's pretty much it. That's how we're connected with you. And you killed it when you're on that first podcast. You've killed on every podcast. But
that's so kind.
Everybody was super excited. Everybody's super excited when we have you back. So that's pretty much how we're connected. So thank you for not abandoning us.
No, I know I say this every time. I may sound like a broken record, but there are people that do a really darn good job at making, number one, a connection. You and Deb do that very, very easily. I feel like that's one of both of your talents, is connecting and making people feel comfortable right away. And so every time, and I'm not lying, this, I've said this too many times, every time you ask me to be on a podcast, it's always a yes. Like my assistant knows when you reach out, it's not even a question. Like it's 100% yes, because I feel like I'm sitting here with like a friend I've known for like 10 years. So it also goes to show, and I'm sure I speak for many people on your podcast, that it's actually a joy to be on these podcasts.
Well, thank you so much. We definitely appreciate the kind words. Normally I would make some joke or say something about what you said, but we just did an episode about giving people their flowers and being willing to accept the kind words. So I'm not going to. I'm going to refrain, because otherwise I'm a hypocrite from our last episode. Thank you so much. That means a lot. I appreciate that. So let's jump into it. Tell us a little bit about, at this point, I feel like each time we do this podcast, we have you explain your backstory, it just keeps getting longer and longer and more. Like the information and the knowledge is just more extensive. But just give us a brief idea of who you are, what you do, and where you came from.
Yeah. So, born and raised in Southern California, grew up in a sports family. My sport of choice was soccer from the age of 5 all the way through college. I had this really bleeding desire to be a part of sports in some form or fashion. And although I was a decent soccer player, I was never going to be like a shining star, like we see on our U.S. women's national team today. And so I knew that I wanted to do something associated with sports. Never thought I'd be in mental performance, but that's kind of where my path led me. So fell in love with it. Finished my master's degree in sports psychology and had a little bit of a rough ride, which I've talked about in many podcasts of yours. And then it led to 4 years with the New York Yankees, where I worked with underneath 2 incredible people and got to work alongside some amazing coworkers of my own. And then recently, early last year, I decided to kind of take a leap of faith and go off on my own. And I am now entering my 2nd year in business.
That's awesome. Dang, it's just been a year.
I know. It's only been it's officially been a year. I just February 1st, I entered my 2nd year of business.
It feels like so much longer.
I know.
And probably more so for you. Yeah.
Same. It feels because a lot has happened in this last year. And
Sure.
and so, man, I'm so thankful and grateful for all the opportunities I've gotten in this last year. But it's, it's that age old saying that, to go after that thing that you love. I love what I do. And so I think when you love what you do, it makes pursuing all the different opportunities, like, honestly, a joy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I
I
feel
mean,
like I don't have enough time, if I'm being honest with you. Like, most of the time, I never feel like I have enough time to get to reach all the goals that I have.
which is probably a good problem to have, right?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
mind it.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, it almost seems like you have a 25th or 26th hour in the day with as much, with as much content as you produce, with as much as you're speaking, with as much as you're doing. I mean, that's just the stuff that we see. Like, we see on Instagram, you going out and speaking places. We see you traveling to, do sessions with clients and companies. We see the motivational videos that you do. That's just the stuff that we see. I know there's so much more that's under the surface that's not seen. So I'm like, she must have a 25th, 26th, maybe a 30th hour in the day, because I don't know how she does it.
I wish. No, honestly, I have a lot of help.
Yeah.
A lot of help, which has been really hard. Learning to delegate when you're a bit of a control freak has been, it's hard. And I'll be totally honest with you. It's one of my flaws. It's one of the things that make me good, but it's one of the things that can hold me back if I'm not paying attention to it. So I've really had to take on the challenge of delegating, which has allowed me to do more, but it's certainly not easy. I think anybody listening to this that is a control freak is like nodding their head. They're like, I know that feeling.
100%. I was thinking, I've had conversations with people before about if this podcast were to just get huge and blow up, and it got to a point where we were making money, and I didn't have to do the editing and the production side of things. I'm like, that would be awesome. And then after I say it, there's like this little thing in the back of my mind, like, but would it, Josh? Because you are kind of the same way, where it's like, would I be able to just let go of all of that stuff, even though it would make my life way easier? Would you actually be able to do it? Because I'd be like, sending emails or like over the person's shoulder, like, oh, did you remember to do this? All the time.
You know what it's like? It's almost like a similar process of developing a really strong friendship. And I'm not saying that it's the same, right? A business relationship isn't always the same as a friendship. Sometimes they're very similar. But every time you delegate, you are exercising trust. And when you exercise that trust, sometimes it comes back really well. Sometimes it doesn't. But the fact that the most important piece is that communication continues, of what your expectations are, of what your standards are, of how to fix this, how you would like to see it done. And I realize, it sounds so stupid, but again, for anybody that has had to delegate and gone through this process, you may be able to relate with me here. Is like, sometimes I feel like I think everybody else thinks the way I do. And it's just so wrong to think that, like, on so many levels.
Right.
So when I explain something, I've learned now where I lacked communication skills, and it's actually opened up an opportunity for me to learn how to be clear, concise, and not so vague, because
Sure.
I think I was vague. And, so there's so many lessons in that, but man, that was one thing that really helped. And I'm so glad and thankful to work with the people I do, because they're willing to sit down and have those conversations with me and give me good feedback. Like, hey, how was this? And I'm like, well, I could use a little bit more guidance here, or a little bit more freedom here. I'm like, oh man, I totally see that.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, again, going back to this idea of our podcast, getting connected with people. Like, we realize that connections are everywhere, and the strength or weakness of those connections really kind of paves the way for what your life looks like, right? Like, if you have really strong connections to people, then things are probably going to be going pretty well for you. Even when things are difficult, you have a lot of people that you can lean on for support, and they have your back. And if you don't have great connections, then obviously it goes the opposite way, and you can see a lot of flaws as you're going throughout your journey. But one of the questions I had for you was, if anybody is following or has been following Lauren for a while, and if you're not do so now. If you go kind of scroll through your Instagram page, you do a lot of work with, is it Sato Studios?
Oh, Mike Sato.
Mike Sato, the videographer.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so it seems like you work really well. You definitely work really well with them, because we've seen the finished products of what you guys do. But because you scroll back a little ways, it's the one person that you've worked with for quite a while. Obviously, there's a connection there. How long did it take to find a videographer that could help you create the content that you wanted to? And then also, how important was it to find somebody that you're comfortable with? Because I would imagine that that connection has to be there. Because if the connection's not there, I guarantee it's going to come through on the other side of the camera, where you look at it, it's like, okay, it's cool, but I don't know if it's as great as it could be. So how important was making that connection?
So important.
Yeah.
So important. I'll start with this. Nikki B introduced us too. So she is what I like to call a super connector. She's so incredible at connecting people. And like just planting seeds, you just never know when they'll grow. And so
Yeah.
I actually knew Mike for a couple of years before I hired him. And interestingly enough, we were somehow connected through the golf world, because both of his sons play at a high level, and are, younger than my husband. But as you know, my husband's a professional golfer. So
Right.
he knew his kids, both of his sons. So crazy little connection there. But I knew he did good work because of the work he had done for Nikki in the past. And it's funny, when I met with him, I just he's so even keel, so low key, and so he just wants whoever's in front of the camera to shine.
Yeah.
That it worked so well. And I mean, you have to think about this. He travels everywhere with me.
Mm-hmm.
So all of my keynotes, every single event that I go do, Mike is with me. And so if you don't like traveling with that person, we literally talked about this on our last trip. I was like, imagine if we hated traveling together. And we both were like, he's like, it wouldn't work. I'm like, no, this wouldn't work.
Be brutal. Yeah.
It'd be brutal.
Yeah.
We enjoy each other's company. We get along so well. He knows my family. I know his so well. And it's phenomenal. But you're right. It comes across on the camera, and he has helped me grow in so many ways because he wants me to do well. There's no other reason. He wants me to do well, and he will give me feedback. And that is not always easy to hear, but it's what I need to hear. And so he alone has gotten me so comfortable in front of the camera. He'll question me. He'll go, it's funny, because I'll tell you, we actually had this moment in Miami, a couple months ago. I was filming a clip in the middle of South Beach. And so there's people everywhere. It was during this huge art festival, people everywhere. And he pulls out his camera. And I felt so self-conscious in that moment. I think I'm hot stuff here.
Yeah.
And I felt so uncomfortable. So oh my God, I'm going to be on Influencers in the Wild. I'm going to show up on that account. I'm terrified.
Wait, is that a thing?
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. Go follow
Thank you so much. Everybody go check that out. I've never heard that, but now I will. I'll check it out. Go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, I have all these fears coming up, and he stops me and he said, Lauren, can you tell me the difference between speaking in front of 1,000 people, doing a keynote, and speaking here right now? And while there are some differences that I felt were quite justified, he made a really good point, and it made me recognize the thing that was holding me back was the opinions of others. And so I made a piece on it. I said, I have to be honest, filming this right now is so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I realized I had to take my own dang advice.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of dove into it, and he has just brought out this authenticity in some of these clips that I could not have done without his guidance. So somebody like him and that connection is so important and invaluable, especially when you're producing something for the world to see. Without that authenticity, it just feels like meh, it's just another video. It's just, and I'm not saying my videos are, maybe some people feel that way with my videos, but I do know that I connect with many. And
Yeah.
so even if it's that one person, that's what I'm going for.
Right.
And as long as it's authentic to me, I can say I can be happy and proud of the stuff that I put out there.
As well you should be, because like I said, the stuff's super dope and it's always fun. I share it all the time. I feel like, especially with like Home Team, my other podcast, if anybody wants to check it out, feel free. But I feel like it's like cheating because I don't have to think of my own stuff. I was like, oh, I should just share Lauren's stuff. This will be perfect.
I love it.
She said it way better. It's like I bounce between like your stuff, Kevin's stuff, and then I'm good. But yeah, no, like I said, it's obvious that there's a connection there. And I want to say this, just for anybody who's wondering, if you're expecting us to go like way deep into the performance stuff, I'm not going to this time. I've done it quite a few times with Lauren on other podcasts. So please go check those out. And you can basically just type her name into Apple Podcasts. You can find her stuff everywhere. I have so many other questions like about this stuff because I find it super interesting. So I hope you're okay with that.
Please.
I hope everybody who's listening to this is okay with that, because I'm taking this in a very different direction than we normally do. So, but that being said, like it's very obvious that the creativity there between you guys there's a connection there, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And so where does like the creativity come from? Like, is it kind of a balance? Is it some teamwork going on there? Is it an idea that you have, or is it he's like, hey, I have a really cool idea, or is it both?
So it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
He has a lot of the ideas in terms of shooting, and then I'll connect it with something mental performance wise.
Nice.
And so, for instance, he's like, hey, I want to go shoot on Miami Beach. Like, we're in Miami. Hello. So that's when I came up with the Be Like Water,
Awesome.
Idea and concept, talking about how, the Bruce Lee's famous quote, be like water, and talking about adaptability. And then, we'll be somewhere else and I'll try and discuss something that like has to do with that. We were in Chicago. And so I discussed like, failure and we went to like all different locations, and 2 of them were sports locations. So
Yeah.
we do our best to marry the story with the production value.
Right.
And he still comes up with great ideas too. So like he'll send me some like inspirational, ideas or clips that actually help get, the juices flowing with my creativity. Because sometimes it can be really hard sitting by yourself in terms of creativity all the time. Like for instance, today we shot some things for, this week, and I had all these concepts going. Okay. So I like wrote out all these topics I was working on. And when he got there is when I finally pieced it all together. And I told him, I was like, there's something about you being here.
Yeah.
That like, I don't know if it's because it puts pressure on, if whatever it is, but it allows me, it like gets me really like zoned into the moment I'm in, and allows me to like create really effectively. So it's interesting. We just have like I said, it's such a good working relationship. I mean, this guy's like family to me. We like, we get to go do some of the coolest stuff. Like he's like, all right, we're going to shoot at the, the top of the Empire State Building. We're going to go shoot, like we go to the coolest locations to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And we try and find the coolest spots. And it ends up being just incredible to be able to marry the story with the production. It's a challenge for me, but it's a lot of fun because it's a way I've never been challenged like this creatively.
Right. Well, it's definitely paying off because, like I said, the stuff is really, really cool. And when you have something that's like pleasant to look at, like with this crazy scenery and all of that matched with like an amazing message, and it's all within like a minute. I mean, it's pretty cool. That's one of the cool things about social media. Now, I do want to ask. So this is kind of out of order, but since I'm thinking about it, I want to kind of touch on this first. I want to talk about the Elite by Choice event conference. What's it called? What's the word for it? Is it like a special term?
I just call it an Elite by Choice event because,
okay.
I just call it an event. You could call it a mastermind. You could call it
mastermind.
Like
that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, but it's, so I guess in a way it's as close to a mastermind as you can get, because it's small. It's really focused in one specific area. I think that's what a mastermind is, at least to my knowledge.
That's what I was thinking of. I just couldn't think of the words. So
Yeah.
I do want to hear more about that. But before I lose this thought, I do want to ask. So obviously you are surrounded by people that follow you on social media that are in the same field as you. Maybe they're pursuing the same field, or they want to do the same things that you're doing. And that's always kind of it's an awesome place to be, but it's also a weird place to be too. Because like my friend who I do my other podcast with, Kevin Bracey, he's a motivational speaker. He's been doing it at a high level for so many years, and he coaches other speakers or people who want to be speakers. And I think one of the things that he consistently runs into is a lot of these aspiring speakers are looking at where he's at now and comparing themselves to that, or thinking, oh, okay, I need to do X, Y, and Z. He was like, no, he's like, you need to start A, B, and C first, and then we'll get to X, Y, and Z. I imagine the same thing is true for you, where people are seeing the content you're putting out there. People are seeing all the amazing things that you're doing, and they're like, well, how do I do that? Or maybe they're like going out and hiring a videographer. It's like, you're not there yet. Like, let's take a couple of steps back, maybe 10 steps back, because you're not at that point. Like, is that something you run into a lot? Like, is there a disconnect sometimes between like what you're doing, how much work it took to get there, versus people just want it to happen right away?
Yeah, there's definitely a percentage of people that reach out to me that, ask me, should I do this? Should I do this? And I'm like, hey, the most basic level, okay, if we like boil everything down to its most common denominator in terms of being an excellent mental performance coach, or honestly, any kind of coach, is doing really good work. That used to be, and still is. So used to be and still is how I define success in what I do, is doing really good work. And that comes down to knowing your stuff, knowing yourself well enough to be able to give yourself feedback on whether or not you even know what you're talking about. Because I think one of the biggest things that I know I ran into in terms of my big growth, my big step in growth, is this idea that when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And when you start out right out of grad school, you have a hammer and it's like, hey, I have this skill for this. I have this skill for this. I have this skill for this.
Yeah.
But what they don't teach is, okay, but what if this is involved as well? Okay, but what if this circumstance doesn't negate this? What if this person, okay, they've done that before, or that just doesn't fit this situation or this personality? So one allows you to be really fluid with understanding and being really flexible and really adaptable. And one is really rigid. And you can't become flexible without first being rigid in this field, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because you have to first understand some of the basics before you can understand beyond them. And so when it comes to this, what you're talking about is, hey, this fundamental understanding that you just focus on being really elite in what you do. Is one of the best pieces of advice I can give. And I think for a lot of grad students, that can be a frustrating piece of advice. And I totally get that. I actually talked to somebody the other day who, more recent grad, and she made the same mistake I did. And it was right out of grad school. She believed she needed more credentials to separate herself. And I quickly reminded her, you do not need more credentials to separate yourself. You need to get really good with what you currently have. That will separate you.
Right.
And she asked, how do I do that? And so I gave her some really good applicable steps. And I know for me, I have these written up here as a reminder, is that if I learn, I learn by reading. So if I read, I write. My writing is a reflection of how well I know something. So if my writing is all over the place, if my writing doesn't make sense, if I'm jumbled in my thoughts, I know I don't know it well enough. So I read, I write, then I create. And in that order, that helps me become the best version of me. That helps me do really good work. And I said that you can take that but you have to find what works best for you. Yours may look slightly different than that. But as you continue to get better at what you do, your product that you give is better. And I tell you right now, if you're dang good at what you do, people will want to work with you.
That's good. That's really good. Look at this. Lauren's just dropping gems all the time. I have a notepad here. It's like, there's no point in taking notes because I can just pick a spot on the podcast. There's something good there. So that's why you make my life so much easier. I appreciate you for that. No, that's incredible advice. And I think that's so applicable to anybody, anything that they're doing. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're a mental performance coach, it doesn't matter if they're a teacher, a coach. I mean, really, it could be anything. And that information, that advice would apply. So I think that's great. Another place you can get great advice, Elite by Choice. An incredible event that I think last time we did a podcast together, it was, I think right before that event. I think so. I think it was right before that event. So last time we spoke, I said, hey, good luck. Hope it goes well. Now I get to hear about it. So first of all, tell us all about it, why you wanted to start it. Because again, from the outside looking in, I thought this would be such a great thing to talk about on this podcast because that event was all about connection and you're trying to help people, connect with different ideas. And then ultimately they get to go on and connect better with the people that they're serving. So I really wanted to touch on this. I really want to talk about it. You just recently announced that you have not just another event coming, but multiple events coming, which is awesome. So tell me a little bit about that, how it started, where the idea came from, and then all that stuff.
Yes. Well, this is a perfect thing to talk about because I created this. I'll start with this. This was the event I wish I could attend and sign up for, but it didn't exist.
Sure.
In our field, there is one big conference. It's called the ASP conference, and it's the Applied Association for Sports Psychology. It's a great conference. Thousands of people go to this. And I kept finding myself feeling like I never made any deep connections with new people. I would meet a lot of new people. It was a lot of quantity, but very few quality. Because when you're at an event like that, the last thing you want to do is spend all your time with one person, right?
Sure.
You want to diversify. You want to meet a lot of people. And what ends up happening is, again, you find yourself with a quantity and a lack of quality connection, I should say. And so I was like, I want to create the opposite and not the opposite in terms of anything beyond this size. And so I was like, I want to get the opposite where you leave with every single person. You had a connection with every single person there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I limited the capacity of the event. And actually, we had less show up. So we had 20 people show up. And all 20 people said, I wouldn't invite one more person.
Wow.
I asked them, I was like, what do you think of the size? I was like, because less people showed up than I was expecting. And every single person said, no, this is the perfect size.
That's awesome.
And I created it for many reasons, but one of them is the connection. The other part was to be able to talk about things that don't get talked about a lot in our field, which is things like what you charge, how to make more money, how to create a business, how to storytell, how to essentially to peel back the layers of becoming an elite mental performance coach. And not just hearing it from me, I have my version of that, but I brought in some of the best mental performance coaches that I personally knew and had them share their version of what that looked like. And I think the coolest part about our field is there's not one way to do it. There are so many ways. It's finding what works best for you. And so I wanted to create a space where people felt psychologically safe to express maybe things that are holding them back, the things that they're fearful of, and that we could all be there to support one another through it. And that's exactly what happened. And then some. Like when I say the connection in that room is hard to explain, I think every single person that attended would back me up in that same phrase. It was so phenomenal. I mean, I feel like every person there is like family to some degree after it.
Wow.
My family worked the event. My husband was there. My mom was there. My
Yeah.
mom's best friend, who's like a second mom to me, was there. I mean, it was like a family affair. And by the end of it, people are like, my mom, she drove one of the vans, and
I saw that. Yeah, it was fun.
and all the girls in that, they were like, they called themselves Debbie's dolls. And so they were like, they had their team names and stuff. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It was like
Yeah.
so phenomenal. And people left with challenged ideas, challenged thoughts. They left feeling empowered. They left with actionable items that they could apply that day. And I've personally got to see some of the amazing transformations that have happened as a result of this. But I think beyond all of those things, the biggest piece that people took away was connection.
That's incredible.
There's nothing cooler than watching people that attended that event that did not know each other before it support each other on social media, fly to each other's states to spend time with each other. I mean, nothing cooler. So after that event, I remember feeling so filled up and like, that's the room I want to be in. I learned and gained so much more than I gave. And I know that that's just going to continue every time I host this event. My job is to facilitate a space where I can invite people in and we can all learn and grow from each other. And that's exactly what happened.
That's incredible. No, that sounds like just an amazing event. I love what you said about, I guess it's what other people said about the size of the group too. Because I think, what book was it? Was it David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell? Can't remember. I think I want to say it was that one, but he talks about that in one of the chapters where, you hear all the time in schools, there's this idea that a smaller class size is better, but there is like this sweet spot, right? Because he was saying that if it's too small, then it's too intimate, and then no one feels comfortable learning because you feel like you're just too intimate and close with everybody. And if it's too big, then you feel like you're just lost and you're not even really a part of anything. You're just kind of in this massive group, like a movie theater, and you don't mean that much, but like that, there's that perfect number that increases and enhances the amount of connection that can happen. And it sounds like you found that perfect number, which is so cool. And it sounds like just hearing that from everybody must have been a fun. I mean, I'm sure the feedback has got to be so cool after those events.
Gosh. Well, and there was one day, and it touched me beyond. There was one day, we had Mike Sato was there.
Yeah.
And he had his camera set up. And during any of the breaks, you could go over and you can leave a review on how you thought this event was.
Nice.
There was no obligation. It was just if you felt called to do it. Every single person got up and made time to go over there.
Wow.
And give a testimonial. And I can't even get through all of them without like tearing up, because it's like,
yeah,
these people are just speaking straight from their heart. And it was phenomenal. And yeah, I mean, I just can't say enough things about it. I know I'm biased, and it's one of those things I get a lot of questions, are you going to do a virtual event? And the answer is no, because there's something about that room. And again, the psychological safety where people they're being honest. They're spilling things that they haven't told other people. We are not going to ruin the integrity of that.
Mm-hmm.
I want everybody to feel safe.
Yeah.
The only reason we even record is for the speakers. We only record what the speakers say,
Sure.
not the audience. And then the speakers can use those clips how they want. It's not ever going to be resold. It's not ever for anybody else. It's for the people that join that room. And so what I've done now, so for this year, and so sorry if I'm getting ahead of you, but for this year, we're not only hosting another one for mental performance coaches, because I have a passion for just improving our field. But also I've created one for professionals.
Oh, nice.
So it's not just for mental performance coaches. There's going to be a specific one for that. This is going to be for business professionals, coaches. I mean, it doesn't matter, podcasters, doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
We're diving into developing an elite mindset for whatever it is that you do. And because I got a lot of requests for that, a lot of people are like, is this for me? Can I attend to this? And I will never recommend something that I don't think you'll get value out of. And so when people ask me, I'm like, look, I'm not going to say you won't find value, but I want you to understand this is coming from the point of view of somebody in this field.
Right.
So if you're not in this field, I just want you to know what you're getting yourself into. So I created an event specifically for professionals that can join and get a very similar experience for Elite by Choice with mental performance coaches, but tailored to them.
Wow. That's awesome. That's really cool. And I can imagine. I was wondering, that was not a question I had for you, but that's a great thing to think about for sure, is that so many people would have seen that, because I imagine the majority of people that follow you are not in the mental performance, world. They're probably like athletes, coaches, business people,
right, that
benefit from those things, but aren't actually actively working in that field. So I imagine that you got a lot of feedback saying, hey, like, what about us?
Exactly.
Don't forget about us.
Well, and it's something that a lot of people attend. I mean, and I just got kind of introduced to masterminds last year, and I love them. There's no better place to meet and make connections than that. So there were several people that are like, hey, I love to attend these. Can I attend? I'm like, well, you're welcome to join, but let me let you know what this looks like, and you can make that decision for yourself. And I just know that this will, fulfill a lot of those questions a lot of people had.
That's awesome. So she heard you people, and look at that. She created an event specifically for you guys. So that's awesome. So let me ask you, so you touched on this a little bit, but another question I had for you was, obviously I was following along with your event on social media, and it was very obvious that your husband was present, your mom was present, like you said, your second mom, if that's the best way to put it.
Yes.
They were all there actively participating in, the event, helping run the event and all that stuff. How much more special did that make the event? Like, obviously seeing the connections for all of these all 20 people that came together is awesome. That's the main purpose of the event. But like, selfishly for yourself, the person who's putting the event on, the person who's worked so hard to get to this point of their career, like, how special is that to see the people around you, your support system, be there, and not just like, hey, I hope it goes well, but actively engage in supporting you and, it's a dream of yours. What was that like?
Oh my God. You know what it was? It was the first time I got to share my world with my world. Like, I got to share my world of mental performance with my family, and I got to share my family with my world of mental performance. It's these two worlds I exist in, but quite separately most of the time.
Sure.
And so it was the first time that they really kind of came together. And it's so funny. Sometimes I feel selfish sharing things about myself on my social media. I've been told many times, like, people want to hear more about you. People want to learn more about your life. That's why they're connected to you. And I've always struggled with that. And I have to say, this event cured a lot of that struggle for me, because I always felt like it was selfish to share those things. But I saw how much closer people felt to me when they rode in the car with my husband and spent 30 minutes with him talking just about life.
Yeah.
Like, one of our attendees literally told me, like, he had some, difficult things that happened to him actually with his family during the event itself. First of all, the whole event rallied around him, but he spent 30 minutes in the car with my husband, and he got out and he's like, he's going to make me cry. He literally was like, Lauren, I love that man. And I was like, oh my God, like, me too. But it was so special because somebody else got to see how special my husband is. And my husband got to support and love on this other person that I think is so special. So it was just like something that would never normally happen. That was so cool to me, and I will never forget.
That's amazing. No, and you could just tell too, every post. I mean, obviously now, your reaction to
I
that
know it's like
question is
ridiculous. I mean, it's like
no,
crazy
but
to me that I'm still this emotional about it, but it
it has a
just goes
lasting
to
impact.
yeah, it goes to show just how deep that moment was and that
Yeah,
connection was
sure.
to have been a part of that. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And like I said, even from the outside looking in, just looking at the post, it was, and just seeing, like, I think seeing the joy, like in your face, in your family's face, just in these still shots, I think that was pretty clear that it was a very, very special thing. Um, Not to take this in a random direction, but I've told my
Yeah.
wife this. I've never told you this before. I've told my wife this multiple times. Anytime I see a picture of you and your husband, it's like I'm looking at a picture of the like prom king and queen. That's what you
Oh
guys
my
look
God.
like.
So kind of
Like, this
you.
is like an awesome looking couple. Rachel's stuck with me. It's like she's taking a picture of like a Make-A-Wish kid. You know what I mean? I don't know if I can say that, but it's my podcast. It's fine. But that's what.
Oh my God.
But I've told her that before. I'm like,
Uh,
look at these people. This is awesome.
well,
So
that's so very kind of you.
yeah, no problem.
So very kind. We take very few pictures together. Actually, it's funny
Yeah.
at the event, we're like, we got more pictures from my event of he and I than we have in like the last year in total.
Oh, perfect.
We are not, we just forget. We forget to take pictures quite frequently.
It's which is, I'll say this. That's not necessarily, I mean, this is going to sound weird. It's not necessarily a bad thing though, right? Because I know some people, I'm like, have you ever not taken a picture with your significant other or your friends? Because, but again, like it goes kind of like into the whole phone thing, right? Like we're so attached to our phones. Sometimes you just want to spend time with the person and you don't need to document it every time. I was just talking to my friend Kevin about this on one of our recent podcast episodes. He's like, hey, you don't need to post everything that you do. Just enjoy the moment.
Exactly.
Enjoy your family, enjoy your kids, enjoy your, husband or wife, whatever it may be. Just enjoy the time. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
plenty of pictures. So that being said, it's awesome that you guys got so many pictures. That you guys made up for lost time.
That's how we felt. That's how
Yeah.
we felt. Yeah, it was awesome. No, but it was it's true. We don't take a lot of pictures. Number one, we don't always like taking pictures.
Sure.
Number two, we like to be involved in the moment that we're in.
Yeah.
And I should say it's something that we are good at sometimes and sometimes have to work at.
Sure.
Because we've gotten trapped. Like even the other day, Jake's like, can you get off your phone? And I was like, oh crap, I wasn't even aware of it. And I've done the same to him. I'd be like, hey, I'm sitting here. Like, can we like hang out? Like, can we have dinner together?
Yeah.
So we do call each other out and we're not always great at it, but
Sure.
We do try to just be in the moment, which I think sometimes is also a reason why we forget to take photos, which to me, again, like you said, I'll take that any day of the week.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Like rarely do you think like when you're, with people and you're sharing a story about, something that happened with you and your husband, like a fun memory. It's never like, hey, I need to show you this picture because it captures no, it's like the story you tell, the memories you have of that moment.
Yeah.
That's really what, is captured, right? Like that's the most meaningful part. I've never just showed a picture and think like, here you go. And just like let them stare at the picture blankly. It's like, everything that happened that day because you saw the picture. It's like, no, there's so much more to it. That's nice having pictures for sure. But yeah, like I said, I don't think that's not a bad thing for sure. And that's something my wife and I have talked about before too with kids, especially now. Like I remember my dad used to have like the massive box video camera, like videotaping all of our baseball games and stuff like that, which I'm super thankful for because he's super organized, has it like, in order of year, sport, all that stuff. So that's super so fun to look back at. But because it's so easy for us now, like for him, it was like an active, like I have to have film, it's a process. For us, it's like just pull the phone out. And sometimes it's even with our kids, it's like you want to capture the moment, but then it's like, are you capturing the moment? Or are you enjoying and living the moment right now? And it's like, it's a different balance for sure, especially when it's so accessible. But anyways, I don't know why I went down that road. I can't remember. That's one of those sidetracks. It was bound to happen.
Hey, so, I like them.
Oh, perfect. So I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time. I have so many other questions. Where do I want to go next? Because I have, okay. I want to go here. This is where I want to go. So, obviously, again, if we're looking at your social media presence, if we're looking at, your event, like your name's on the event, people are drawn to the event because of you. People share your quotes. People share your videos. and your name's attached to it. That's the name of your company, right? Your name is the name of your company. You are the product. Like it revolves around you. As weird as that sounds, like a lot of it revolves around what you do and what you have to say and all of that. Is it difficult at times to remain humble in those moments? Because, obviously you want to be confident. If you weren't confident, like no one would want to listen to you. It's like, I don't think Lauren's that confident. Like, why would I listen to her about mental performance when herself doesn't seem confident? So you want to be confident, but like, is there a point where you get so lost in, like, you start feeling yourself? It's like, I'm pretty dope. Like, nobody can tell me anything. Like, how do you, I guess, defend against that? Because I imagine it would be pretty easy to fall into that if you're not careful, if that makes sense. That was a very long question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's so weird. I never feel like a finished product. And it can be, and by the way, I like that. I never want to feel like a finished product.
Yeah.
It's funny. I actually battled it more at the beginning of my career than I do now. I was very naive at the beginning of my career. I was like, all I need is a master's.
Yeah.
And then I am on my way. I got my master's, and again, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I thought I had the answer to everything mental performance. Nobody could tell me I was wrong. I was like, yeah, we'll check out this science, like literally so bad. And to be honest with you, I can look back and now say that.
Yeah.
I am so aware that the more I know, the less I know. And I actually think for me, it's actually more of a detriment than it is a good thing. I think sometimes I could be more self-conscious of just, am I enough?
Sure.
Than I am, I'm hot shit.
Really interesting.
I don't feel that way very often, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
I have moments where I go, wow, like I crushed that presentation. I did that so well. But rarely does that something that I think holds me back to any degree.
Yeah.
Actually, to be honest with you, using my name on a lot of things makes me uncomfortable. Because the goal is not to just make it like all about me. The goal is to facilitate something for somebody else. Mm-hmm. It's a weird like battle I have in my own head quite frequently, to be honest with you. Because it's weird. Growing up, I used to believe that success and my worth was attached to my outcomes. And so when I had really great outcomes, I was hot shit.
Yeah.
I was like, we good.
Yeah.
And then when I had really bad outcomes, I was like literally terrible. Like I was worthless.
Yeah.
And so I think that riding that roller coaster and learning that my worth is not attached to that has helped me with this journey. But it's a battle I continuously hit. I think I go through my periods of feeling really good about myself and really bad about myself, but the highs are not so high and the lows are not so low. I'm able to stay as in the middle as much as freaking possible. Yeah. But the other thing that helps me with that is I have people around me that I trust that are willing to tell me otherwise.
Right.
So if I am feeling myself a little too much, my husband's going to let me know.
Yeah.
And I want him to.
Yeah, sure.
I don't want to get caught up in that. And you can totally get caught up in it. And I have a lot of people around me that I am very, very thankful to have around me that I think are willing to tell me the truth. And I've told them many times, like, hey, if I ever come off that way, will you like ball your hand up in a fist and punch me in the nose?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, done. I'm like, okay, cool.
It's like, why did you say yes
I'm gonna
so
extend
quickly? Yeah.
I know. Wow. Yeah, exactly. Geez.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll extend that to you as well. If you ever see that, I would love to know, because the goal would never be to be that way.
Yeah.
And while I think we all fall into it from time to time, the goal would be to be able to recognize it as quickly as possible.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's a very, very real answer. I appreciate that. Because like I said,
it's a good question. I've
Yeah.
never been asked that.
Oh, perfect. I try to throw one of those out every once in a while. Besides like the dumb questions, I try to, like, because like I said, I should have probably given you a heads up beforehand, but I've done these podcasts with you a few times, and I'm like we've talked a lot about the performance stuff, which is awesome. But I've also listened to so many of your podcasts that you've done and been a guest on that talk about that thing, which is awesome. Like that's what you do. You should be talking about that. But I'm like, I'm just more interested in some of this other stuff, and hopefully people find this stuff interesting, like the business, creativity, and obviously the personal stuff too, because I think that's going to be beneficial. So sorry, I didn't give you a heads up on any of that. I'm just gonna go.
I'm glad you didn't, and here's why. Because when I get asked tough questions like that, the reason why I love it is because you actually give me an opportunity for discovery. I literally just spoke from the heart, and I can tell you I deal with the opposite more often than I deal with that.
Yeah.
I deal with not feeling good enough more than I deal with feeling too good. Now, I'm not saying I've never felt too good before. Trust me, like I said, I've been brought down a couple notches, either by reality, because that's funny. Reality hurts, right? When you're not in reality.
Yeah, for sure.
But then also, with people that love me but are willing to tell me the truth. Right. So I thank you for these questions, because it's like kind of a moment of discovery for me. And so I apologize to anybody that's listening if you felt like I was rambling, but I was actually quite honestly working through the answer as I was speaking. And so thank you for that question.
Yeah, for sure. I'll say this too. If anybody's concerned about rambling, they shouldn't be listening to them. They're clearly not a fan of this podcast. It's what Deb and I do every week. So I was like, they're fine with rambling. No, that's awesome. And it's funny. I haven't told you this, but so when we first, like, I joked early in the podcast, and like I was so excited. Deb and I both were. That's like, oh, it's Lauren from the Yankees. We were so stoked to hear that you were going to be. That one, Nikki suggested you to us, and two, that you were willing to come on the show. But I'm not gonna lie to you. When like the day before leading up to that podcast, when we first met you, I did tell my wife, I'm like, I hope she doesn't suck. Like, because the more I thought about it, I'm like, she does work for the Yankees. Like, she's at a pretty high level. We haven't really had a guest at this level before. Like, this is gonna be awful if she's just a horrible person. And like, you put that my mind at ease right away, because I met you in the parking lot when you got there, and you're like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, oh, she seems cool. Yeah, she seems very excited. So this is awesome.
I was.
And you were very nice, very kind. So I'm like,
you were like the second podcast I'd ever done in my life. So I was like so excited.
That's crazy. And now, how many have you done today?
Several.
Yeah.
And
I say just today, right? Like today is probably like the fourth or fifth.
No, you're the only one today.
Really?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, only one today. No. I've done many, and thankfully, I absolutely love being on podcasts. But no, not that many. I'm not, come on, I'm not like, Beyonce. That'd be great. I mean, with a couple tequilas, I think I am, but I'm not. I'm definitely not. I'm in reality right now. I'm aware.
There you go. We'll have to do a podcast after a couple tequilas, I guess. We'll have Lauren start singing on the show.
Oh God, you're gonna lose followers if we do that.
People always say that. It's like, what, we're struggling for followers right now. We can't lose that many. So the people that are with us are really with us. So that's so funny. I had a thought, now it's completely gone. I had a question for you based on what you just said, but it doesn't matter anymore. It's gone. Sorry, now I'm blanking. I don't usually blank. This one just got me. Oh, where do I want to go? No, it's okay.
Beyonce and tequila
I think it was. It really threw me. Usually I'm good here, but it got me off my game. Okay, so let me ask you this: just one final question. Never mind. I'm not going to ask that question. Never mind. I don't feel like it. It's not that great of a question.
All right. So yeah.
We're going to skip it. Sorry. Came into a weird screeching halt on this podcast. Sorry about that. So obviously you have the elite by Choice stuff coming up. Do you have any dates for that stuff? Did you mention the dates already, or is it still not
So
yet?
the first one is going to be the Elite by Choice for professionals, and that's going to be in May. The official dates in May have not been released yet. That is literally, we're days away from having that date. The location secured, all of that. It's just it's between 2 weekends. We're just waiting to figure that out. The Elite by Choice for mental performance coaches date is November. It's going to be the 10th, 11th, and 12th of November. And that one's going to be epic too. So both of them, different locations, different times of year, but both are going to be just phenomenal. They're going to be so much fun.
That's awesome. Now the location, like I said, this is one of my last questions before I get you out of here, but the location that you chose for this past event, how did you find that place? Because that place is amazing.
I actually spoke at somebody else's mastermind at that event and was blown away by the location. And so thankfully, my good friend Nick, he was like, I got you. Like, let me know the weekend, I'll set it up for you. So I had a great friend and advocate that helped me with that location, but it was actually a community center within a epic housing development in Colorado.
Really?
So it's not like it's kind of this random space. Wow, it was beautiful. Like, oh, it was amazing. So it's been hard to top, to be honest with you, because like you got views, you got nature, you've got such a cool setting. And it has been hard to top, but I'll tell you, like, we've got some pretty cool locations coming up.
That's awesome. No, it looked amazing. I would have never guessed it was a community center. I would have thought it was like a resort or a hotel or something like that, a golf course, something. That was incredible. Well, I know you shot like a pretty long one-shot video out there as well.
Yes.
Were you at all worried about snakes? Are there snakes? I hate snakes. Were there snakes out there?
So do I, but I think it was too cold. It was freezing.
That's true. It was in Colorado.
Yeah, it was in Colorado, and it was towards the fall, so it was cold. So I think I was okay, but Mike, man, he had me climbing some rocks. There's actually, you'll see this in for the site for the next two events. There's a shot. He got this drone shot of me. I climbed all the way up like these rocks at Red Rock. By the way, it says do not climb. And I'm like, meh. And so we just climb all the way up to
Suggestion.
the top.
It's fine.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it was not very safe, but we made it. We're still here today.
I was saying, now you have a story out of it. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Lauren, as always, we definitely appreciate you hanging out with us, taking some time to talk to us, share your insight and knowledge with everybody. Like, we definitely are thankful that you're willing to come on this podcast or all of our podcasts. I promise I don't plan on starting another podcast for a little while. So if you get another invite, it's going to be for one of the two that I'm currently doing, not a third. So
I will always welcome them.
Well, thank you so much. Where can people follow you? Your website? Oh, and by the way, I wanted to mention this too. So I think it was today you mentioned, I think you gave away like 5 15-minute sessions, and normally you charge for those. Are you secretly like stacking up an invoice on me? Like, are these all being billed?
Yes, I am. And I'm sending them actually to Deb. So it's fine.
Oh, yes. We could end this right here. Get ready, Deb. Pay up. I love that. That just made the whole, like you said, a lot of amazing things. That was the best part of the podcast. She's been joking. She recently got a new laptop. I know you don't care about this, but she recently got a new laptop, and she's been talking about how, like, oh, Josh appreciates how much better the camera looks now, and I'm going to bill him. It's like, I don't want your bill for your stupid laptop. This, though, I'm all for this. Please send her the bill.
Please send the bill.
And I can tell you what, she's not cheap. She's not cheap, Deb. So she's good at what she does. So be ready, work some overtime, because it's going to be an expensive invoice. But okay, anyways, where can they follow you and get in touch with you and all that stuff?
So you could, honestly, the easiest way is to go to my website, which is laurenjohnsonandco.com. And that's all the way spelled out, ANDCO.com. And all of my social media handles are there. I post the absolute most on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And all those links will be on my website. That'll be the easiest way to find me.
Perfect. And so definitely go check out all of those. Follow Lauren. You will not be disappointed, especially if you're, like I've said this before, if you're a business person or a sports coach, Like she's literally giving you information and content for free. You can just share it and your team's going to be amazed. Like, oh my gosh, where'd you find this? You can tell them Connectable Podcast. It'll be perfect.
Yes.
Like so much great content out there. So definitely go follow her. And if you're in any of the fields that Lauren mentioned that could benefit from the Elite by Choice, make sure you follow that and all the updates that come with that, because it sounds like it's something you do not want to miss. So Lauren, thank you so much. As always, we appreciate it. And good luck with everything in the future.
Thank you.
And take care.
You too.
Thanks for watching the show. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button to get a new episode every week. We'll see you next time on the Connectable Podcast.